Welcome everybody. I'd like to introduce our moderator for today, our Board of Advisor, Professor Danny Digg. Welcome, the floor is yours.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be joining us. We are so grateful that you are here, and I'm so grateful and honored, and it's my pleasure to be meeting again. Lots of old friends and making new friends, and I love seeing our community making new friends, being thinking partners with each other in the community. As technologists, I'm so grateful for our community. We've been keeping the world running through the pandemic and after, as we come out of the pandemic, and for embracing all adversity as an opportunity, right, to accelerate digital transformation and to transform our factories into smart factories. So my name is Danny Digg. I'm the founder director for the Industrial University Government Consortium for Advancing IoT through Pervasive Personalized Intelligence. And we operate under the supervision of the U.S. National Science Foundation with our industry partners. And I'm so excited that today we get to be thinking partners with some of the great thought leaders in our industry. Before we start, let's take a minute or two to familiarize ourselves with the webinar tool. So we are going to kick off with some of the questions that we think will provide great value for the audience. But also in the second part of our panel discussion, we want to take live questions from you, from the audience. So that's why we want you to familiarize and look around for the chat. Just to do a small practice, how about everyone, as they are joining us, tell us where you're joining us. So look in the chat function on the webinar on Zoom, and type in there, say hello, good morning, or good afternoon, good evening, middle of the night, whatever happens to be your time zone, and say hello and tell us where you are from. And then as you're familiarizing yourself with the chat, also we wanna make sure that people are aware that the questions we are going to post in the Q&A tool, not in the chat. So in the chat you can say hello and interact with other people, but the question for the panel we are going to use the Q&A tool. It will make it easier for us to notice them there and answer them. And a couple more housekeeping things, then we can get going with our panel discussion today. So as you are aware, Industrial IoT World Manufacturing and Supply Chain, it's running through tomorrow, so today and tomorrow, and there are lots of exciting sessions and tracks that I hope that you take full advantage of the rich program that organizers prepare for us. But then the events, the goodies continues. As we say here in the mountains, the powder, the fresh, the goodies, keep coming. So if you're looking at our organizers, they have a fabulous series of events coming, kicking off even in the new year on January 26th, all things Industrial IoT Day. Then we have in March, the Industrial IoT World Energy Day. Then in May, we have the Manufacturing Day. In June 28th, we have Industrial Metaverse Day. In September 27, we have Industrial IoT World Cybersecurity Day, and then we have in October the Smart Buildings Day, and then conclude the year about a year from now on December 7 with the Supply Chain Day and Manufacturing Supply Chain Day. And so fabulous community, fabulous way for us to enrich our thinking and for us to be in a thinking partner community. So as I said, I want to transition now to the Q&A. To the panel, and we will take live questions in the second half of the panel. So our track will run for 58 minutes. We will have you out of here on time so that you can join the next session after us. And last, before we go to the panel itself, so this session will be possible to run without the generous support of our sponsors. So I want to thank you, Hitachi Vantara, HiveMQ, Faircom, Fortinet, Eurotech, Oxys, Building Cybersecurity, Sona, MSA, GA Digital, IFM, Intel, Litmus, and NCC Group. So your generous support make it available, make it opportunity for us. You create an opportunity for us to be all here today and learning from each other. So we are so grateful to have you in our community. So with the housekeeping now out of the way, this is why we are here. I'd like to introduce the topic and the speakers, and then we can get going. So smart factories, so this is something that it's near and dear our hearts, and it's something that we should be grateful to the pandemic. So the pandemic accelerated the digital transformation. It forced people, it forced our community to turn to digitalization, right? To connect everything to the internet for remote monitoring. And then once people start adopting smart factories and seeing the value of digital transformation, so now we are fully immersed into utilizing all the benefits and all the promises of digitalization and IoT. And so that's something that we are going to talk about today. How do we embark on this digital transformation? What are some of the challenges? Where do we start? And on the panel, we have some amazing speakers today. They are the thought leaders in their industry. And I'm going to pass the microphone to each of them, and I will ask them to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about what are you proud of accomplishing in the area of smart factory digitalization at your company or with your clients. So I'm going to start with the first one on my screen, Jason.
Thanks, Danny, and an absolute pleasure to be here, and really appreciate the time that everyone's giving us today. So thank you in advance for that. My name is Jason Bergstrom. I'm a partner at Deloitte. I've spent my entire career in the supply chain and manufacturing spaces, the last 10 years specifically focused around helping clients to digitize their operations. I've also had the opportunity, and I'll talk about this a little bit, to stand up our own smart factory that we use with clients in Wichita, on Wichita State University's campus, where I'm calling from today. So really excited to be here and looking forward to the discussion.
Right. Thank you so much, Jason. So I'm going next on my screen is Robert, calling all the way from Europe.
Good morning, good afternoon, depending where you are. First of all, thanks, of course, for the invite to join the panel. My name is Robert Brandt. I'm the managing director of Ivy Limited. We are a company based in Europe, European Union, and our focus is to help other companies with achievable Industry 4.0 and IoT. We like to help our clients to achieve very big goals, very nice Industry 4.0 implementations, but we like to make this as achievable as possible. We like to break big innovations, to break them up in small steps which are leading slowly to the future goal. And I believe the second part of the question is where I'm proud of. Well, I'm very proud of the feedback that we're getting on the approach that we're taking with our clients, because it sounds like that the philosophy that we are implementing at our client sites is very much appreciated and is truly achievable for them. So this is where I'm very proud of.
All right, helping clients succeed, one client at a time, changing the world one client at a time. I love that. So next on my screen, we go to Mike from Faircom.
Hi, I'm Mike Bowers. I'm Chief Architect at Faircom, and I put a background of me standing on the edge of Canyonlands, right, in southern Utah, where I'm from in Utah, and I have my laptop with me. I'm crazy. I like to bring computers anywhere I go, and so we actually have it's a real laptop on the edge. And Faircom has put a product out there on the market called Faircom Edge. And the idea is to transform the edge of the industry. And this is not, this is based on a real initiative that Faircom believes in, and that we believe that the future of automating factories is, in smart factories, is using MQTT as a unifying protocol to bring all these other proprietary binary protocols like Modbus and OPC UA and many others into a standard, an internet style standard, and using JSON as the data format that's universal across that standard. Now our platform is agnostic. We can support any kind of protocol and format of messaging. But that's our vision, is that if we can unify MQTT and JSON for the world, and we can standardize on it, we can do for manufacturing what the web did for the rest of the world, because the web standardized on HTTP and HTML. So MQTT and JSON is kind of our vision for the future. And we've had some very large customers work with us, like one of the large big three manufacturers of automobiles in the US, to do this exact type of thing. And it's very exciting to see the cost reductions you can get when you use a product like that, like Faircom Edge.
That's beautiful, and I love living on the edge. Right, you're saying how we live on the edge, pushing the frontier, and I love your vision of how can we unite the world. You know, so much. If you look at the politicians, so much is about dividing and focusing on what our differences. And you're looking, why don't we focus on what we have in common? Why don't we create bridges? And you know, we are on the edge, and we create bridges. So I love that mission. You know, that's great to be in community with you. So the first question that I want to ask each one of our panelists is about what are some of the benefits. So, you know, there's a lot of hype about the smart factory, Industry 4.0 and digitalization. But can you tell us what are some of the benefits that you have seen realized, not only from the hype point of view, but also from you have seen in practice with the clients that you work with? And maybe you can also excite our audience with what are some of the, how can they visualize some of these benefits of adopting smart manufacturing? So who wants to start first? I will.
Well, I can start if you want. So, you know, I was mentioning earlier about that big automobile manufacturer. Their vision is this kind of vision I was talking about, where they created a standard JSON format for all of their data. And it's a universal format for them. And we found that every one of our customers wants something a little different in their universal format because they have a little different need. And JSON's very adaptable for that. But it's also very easy to integrate with anything. And so that's the idea, is to go, they built a standard JSON format, and then they use MQTT to communicate and get everything in MQTT so it can go everywhere in their factory. And they're discovering that it makes them very agile. So when you bring in a new piece of equipment, instead of hardwiring, you know, hiring a team to hardwire this protocol to that protocol and that software and to make them work together, and you have a point-to-point, and then you bring in another piece of equipment, that's hardwire it again. When I say hardware, I mean writing software, but you know, you're really wiring it together by hand. Instead, you can just plug it in, subscribe to a topic, and publish commands, publish alerts, and by standardizing on the JSON format, they're able to achieve amazing cost reductions. And cost reductions isn't everything. I mean, we're talking about 40x cost reductions in software development, which is huge. But it's also agility. When you need to change your manufacturing line to build a new electric truck, for example, then you have to change your entire manufacturing process. How do you do that with great speed and agility? Well, that's what you get when you use a smart factory, when you have an integration hub and MQTT and JSON being the universal bridge across all your protocols.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's a very nice way of putting it. You know, I think in the end, it's Industrial IoT and Industry 4.0 is very much about data and connectivity, right? Well, there's some other things involved as well, but definitely data driven. And it's very much about integration. I think this is also what you're saying, right? Everything, you don't have this huge mesh of everything connected with everything, and you need to have some data in a new system where you want to install dashboard. In the olden days, you had to like almost physically install the wire, right? These days, this problem is just not existing anymore. You have all this information in one place. And the funny thing is, it's extremely scalable if it's done properly. You just start with one small business case, right? You extract some data, maybe because you wouldn't do performance measurement. But then the next point is like, well, maybe we should add a little more data, and now we can also do have a real-time quality insight. And at some point, you can use the same infrastructure to send back data to your already connected machinery. It's in my opinion, one of the big advantages is extreme scalability. You can start implementing a very small initial business case, show your organization it works, get your people involved so that they start to love it, and you just can keep adding and adding and adding. And at some point, you have your entire digital integration platform built in this small business cases that you kept integrating. And even though because you're getting much more data in your central data hub, it becomes even much more easy to address bigger business cases at a time, because you already have all this data and you just have to use it in a different way. And then you realize, okay, there's a little bit of information missing. Okay, we also get that in there. And then from then on, well, it keeps scaling. And well, this is absolutely the beauty of Industry 4.0 and IoT. So I completely agree with Mike there.
That's beautiful. It got speed, agility, scalability. Jason, what do you see from your point of view? What are some of the benefits for the clients that you're working with as they are adopting to smart manufacturing?
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe just to come up a level, digitizing operations is not easy, right? So it's a challenge. It's a hurdle folks got to get over, and the reason they want to get over it is because it does unlock a tremendous amount of value, Danny. Right? So we have what we call our big five, which are the big levers we talk about clients with. The first one being how do you unlock improve asset efficiency and OEE, right? So for those that are looking to improve throughput to meet demand challenges, that's one of the biggest levers we go after. Increasing labor productivity would be next. The third would be around quality improvement. So how do you improve first pass yield? The fourth being how do you drive costs down? So similar to Mike's story and what Robert were talking about, there's obviously a huge opportunity to drop all the costs related to the build and direct materials and how you think about your entire operation as you digitize. And then the last one, which is often forgotten, is just the ability to unlock the need for less working capital, right? So rather than moving to putting new steel in the ground or building new facilities or expanding existing production assets, being able to do more with what you have and the savings you get around capital related to that. In terms of your second question, we learned a long time ago that unfortunately PowerPoint and stories only get you so far with clients. Digital manufacturing, Industry 4.0 is something that our clients want to see, they want to touch, they want to know it can be done, they want to know that we can integrate complex systems and data together to drive insights, meaningful insights that are actionable. And so the way we've approached that is, I mentioned it with my introduction, is we've actually built a smart factory and we're able to bring clients through that facility. It's a hands-on, fully immersive experience. Allows clients to see an end-to-end production line, which is full greenfield, fully integrated, completely digitized. We've got about 20 partners that we use that we've brought along the way to help us with that. But what it allows us to do is not just tell stories, but tell stories and then reinforce those stories with an actual experience to be able to show it. It's one thing to say, let's bring together a bunch of data into a command center and we'll be able to make better choices. It's a totally different thing to bring them into a command center and let them play around with things that are happening on the production line and see how it actually works. So that's how we've brought it to life for our clients, and it's been very effective.
Wow, I love that story, Jason. So I think you said that you build this facility in Wichita, right, where people not only look at PowerPoints, but actually they can come on a physical site and can see a prototype of a smart factory, and they can interact with it and experience and visual. They don't have to use their imagination so much. Like they are actually seeing the real thing and can play with the real controls and can see what happens as we shovel the data from one end to the other. So that's beautiful. So I want us to provide value for our audience, and it's great to be excited, and it's great to talk about all the wonderful world of the digital transformation. But let's talk about some of the challenges, right? So real world companies, especially as they transition to smart factories, in the real world, you have factories, you cannot shut down the factory. You have limited time, you have resources, you have a budget, you have production that can be shut down. People have little to no time, right? Besides their they are already overworked. I think something that you said, we need to get more with less resources, right? So that seemed to be like the theme of the pandemic. So people have little time besides their main responsibilities. Again, innovation is seen by many as either an expensive or disruptive or unnecessary. So how can companies innovate with all of these constraints in a real world business? So help our audience. How do we get behind all of those hurdles, all of those challenges that people have, those barriers towards innovation and adopting?
That's a very interesting question, because this is how it happens in the real world. We all can see this. If we close our eyes, we see drones flying through the factory and all this kind of stuff. But most companies realize everything is running and it needs to stay running, and we don't have time to get the drones introduced, right? So, but still, they have to innovate, right? Because sometimes the competition is already innovating. Sometimes they realize their products are getting relatively more expensive than other products in the market. So many companies do realize that they do have to do something, but yeah, they run exactly the problems that you just mentioned. So, And this is one of the parts that we like to address with the philosophy that we are implementing, right? So what we believe is innovation should be done in small, achievable steps. So instead of doing this huge system implementations, it can also, of course, be sometimes necessary. But sometimes it also makes a lot of sense to just do a small implementation. But there's a risk with this, because if you do just a small implementation, there's a very good chance that as soon as it's working and you want to work on the next problem, you have another small implementation and another. So you have a landscape of small implementations which are not correlating or not connected to each other. So it becomes a bit of a mess of solutions. So this is the risk. So what we believe should be done is, first of all, look at where you are now. What is your production like now? What kind of technology do you have? What kind of challenges do you have? What are your biggest pain points and low-hanging fruits? And where do you want to grow to? Where does your company want to be in 5 or 10 years, or maybe even 15 years? And then break it down into small achievable steps in a roadmap of steps. And here it's crucial that every single step is easy implementable, but also makes the next one easier to implement, right? So I think this also relates to what Mike was just saying. If, for example, we start implementing a small business case where we gather information for performance measurement, right? For example, real-time OEE, then we implement a perhaps MQTT JSON-based infrastructure, which gives us the insight that we need to address the business case. We are making some money, and then this is the first step that we're doing, which is actually very doable. The second step is we address the next business case by just adding to the first architecture. So it's really building on every single step, and this way, the more steps you're making, the more returns you're making on this investment, of course, the more bigger steps you can take. And the beauty of these small steps is they're easier to implement, because a smaller step is easier to understand, right? You have also your organization, your people should be working with it. Well, and a small change is easier to understand for people than a big change, right? Well, the risks are lower because the investment is relatively lower. Yeah, so there are a lot of advantages to do it like this, right? The pressure in your organization becomes a lot smaller. So this is how we always suggest to our clients to achieve very big goals in your real-time constraints.
I want to second what Robert's saying, because if you try to eat the elephant all at once, you're just gonna get a tummy ache. But if you can bite it off one at a time, you're in good shape. It's a true principle, but at the same time, you have to do things in a way that will all work together in the end. Because if you do it all one little piece at a time and it doesn't fit into the big picture, it's not going to work in the end. And eventually you'll have 50 elephants you have to eat, and you'll never it'll be worse than you started. So that's where you unify on a standardized, some internet industry standards, some real standards like JSON and MQTT. You pick your vision and you work toward it, and then you do little projects at a time. And that's, by the way, it's true in the IT world as well, because I spent half of my career in the OT world, automating factories, and the other half of my career in the IT world in databases of all things, and because I'm a database architect as well. And in that world, data warehousing is the same kind of story. Data warehousing, some people like to eat the elephant and build a model that conquers the entire enterprise with one ginormous model. That always fails. But there's another model called the Kimball model, where you bite off little things at a time. You build one point solution, but you do it with the vision of the whole in mind, and you gradually build the whole thing, and it works. It actually really does work. And the other thing I wanted to mention is, as you pointed it out, Danny, that the factories already have integrations. They're already working. Sometimes you get I was lucky at one point in my career to build a brand new factory from the ground up and automate the whole thing. That greenfield opportunity was so fun and so awesome. But most of the time you're in there with existing protocols, existing things. How do you bridge? And that's why I have a picture, by the way, of the bridge, a natural bridge behind me, because how do you naturally bridge from the brownfield, which this is a brownfield bridge behind me, to the new greenfield opportunities? How do you do that? And you need a bridging technology that can take you and integrate with the existing technologies and bridge them into this universal MQTT JSON story going forward. And if you can find that technology, of course, Faircom, I brought that vision to Faircom, and that's what we've built that technology, and that's where we partner with system integrators and with companies to leverage it. But that's our vision, is to help you get to this new world by bridging to the old world, the existing world.
Yeah. But also what I really like about MQTT, because we're speaking about it now, is that it's an open standard, right? So you'll never lock yourself in with a particular product or a particular service company, perhaps. So you really can. Well, this is crucial for long-term scalability, right? If you choose proprietary protocols or systems, well, it might become challenging at some point to keep scaling, because the product might not be suitable or the product is no longer serviceable. And for example, when you're using JSON and MQTT as an open standard, anyone can Google it. Another one which is interesting to look into is, for example, SparkPlugB, right? I think we meant it's also roughly kind of JSON based. And yeah, it is crucial to rely on this kind of open standards, open products. And yeah.
Maybe just one add, Danny, if we have a moment. I think the other thing that comes to mind to me is organizations shouldn't try to go do this by themselves, right? And this is not a self-serving comment. I'm simply going to make the assertion that going together is easier than going alone. And what I mean by that is, digitizing operations requires a lot of capability, right? And from fundamentally changing how your people do work, to the technology, which we're talking quite a bit around today, to how you rethink your processes, to how you rethink, in some cases, even markets and delivery models. And to do that by yourself, with the setup of the question, which is everyone's busy, no one has the time to spend to do this and focus their time and energy on it and still produce and operate and be successful against their P&L. You really need to take a step back and think about, what have others done, and how do you leverage their capabilities to help you move quickly and to try to minimize the disruption in your operations. And there's so many fabulous solutions out there. 10 years ago, it was hard to find a really cool best of breed SaaS solution out there that could help your business. Today, they're all over the place. And they're innovations that are coming from garages, like in the 80s. And it's a really fascinating time, because those solutions can make a big difference in large corporations, businesses, if they're willing to take a step back and think about how they can partner with others and bring those solutions to their businesses. So I would just encourage everyone on the phone to think about, don't walk the journey alone, bring partners, don't try to reinvent the wheel. There's so much great stuff out there that you can leverage. I would encourage you to do so.
Oh, that's so beautiful, right? And as my motto, together we go farther, right? So if you want to go fast, for those of us who are here, fortunate to live with the mountains, if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far in the mountains, you want to go and do something of significance, you always go with others, right? So that's the beauty. And as we were hearing from earlier from Robert, I like to summarize that, dream big, but start small, right? Everyone wants to dream big, but start small and show value early on. And then, Mike very beautifully say, leverage the standards, leverage the collective community and don't, Jason, you put the cherry on the top and say, don't go at this alone. So those are all beautiful. So Mike, I want to come down to the MQTT and JSON. So especially we're talking about factories that have legacy protocols, right? Is it possible for a factory that is running on legacy systems? How do they standardize? How do they start leveraging and become standards? And they are not, it's easy for them to find, workforce because they're using the standards. And but what's the transition from working with something that is custom, that is legacy, that is old, to something that is modern and standard? Can you describe to us a little bit that transition path?
You bet. So, let's take, for example, let's say I have Modbus. And Modbus, if you're integrating with Modbus, you go and you talk to a Modbus server, which is some piece of equipment, and you say, give me number 17, and it comes back as a binary double. And you're like, wow, that's really helpful, because I don't know what 17 is. I don't know what a binary double is. I'll look it up in the manual. I'll figure it out. And then I've got to write software to get that and turn it into something meaningful. What we need is a low-code solution in the industry, and several companies are doing this, where we're building connectors, and that's what Faircom's doing, by the way, is making a low-code solution. You just point over there and say 17 is a double, and it's a temperature. And now it comes out and it immediately turns it into JSON, or if you're a SparkPlugB person, it turns it into SparkPlugB. And then that's a standard, and now you can integrate it instantly into the rest of your factory. So the goal is to get the proprietary bus protocols, which are just very, very old school, like, their registers and there's values, and you've got to get them into something JSON. And what's cool about JSON is any human can read it.
Mhm.
If I see 17 and I see a binary double, humans can't read or understand that. But a JSON is just going to say temperature 72 Fahrenheit or 22 Celsius. It's going to just be very easy to understand and read, which means in a factory, you can troubleshoot your equipment. I mean, I integrated factories, and it drives you crazy. When you have a problem, you have to have super specialized engineers who understand, oh yeah, register 17 is a double, and how does a double work? And you have to know all those level details to keep your factory running when something goes wrong. But when it is automatic and comes into the JSON, any operator can look at the messages and say, oh, I see what's going on here. The machine is throwing out temperatures that are way out of kilter, and it's all of a sudden -1 for a temperature, and like, where did that come from? And so you can easily troubleshoot and figure it out. So the key is to get a bridging software, a platform that can automatically, with low code, get you out of the proprietary binary protocols into the MQTT and the JSON automatically, so you can focus on the value add, such as getting your data to the cloud where you can do machine learning. And that's another thing you need some kind of bridge software that'll get you to the cloud and automatically do the machine learning and bring it back automatically. So you don't have to write custom code to do all that. So a low code connector that bridges across the cloud and your devices in the factory, I think, is the way you get started.
Yeah, I think it also really enables, working with legacy stuff, because there's also a funny thing that some companies say, like, we have a lot of legacy machinery, like we should first update everything before we can start with Industry 4.0. But well, at least in my opinion, that's not always the case, right? You can, like Mike just mentioned, you can start implementing stuff, and even there are some advantages to already start with your legacy equipment. Actually, we wrote an article about this on our website. There are some opportunities there as well. And of course, at some point, systems has to be replaced because, well, they run into certain limits, or they are just getting too old to maintain. But it should never be a reason not to start implementing. As soon as you integrate all your data in, for example, MQTT with JSON, and from then on, I mean, you can just connect it to your entire solution. Even things like predictive maintenance become possible as soon as you have your systems connected to your digital infrastructure.
Right on. So I think we are so excited because we are technologists. We are so excited about technology, but are there other aspects besides the technological ones to consider when building towards the smart factory of tomorrow? What are some of the other challenges, or some of the other, how can smart manufacturing operations stabilize things like supply chains? And so can you talk, and I want to, Jason, I would like for you to start addressing this question. Like, what are some of the other things that, besides the technology, that we need to be aware of when we are transitioning to a smart factory?
Yeah, sure. And look, maybe just to start with, I will say, obviously, technology is a very important component. The advancement in tech in the last few years in particular has absolutely made things possible we couldn't do, or we could only imagine we could do, really only 2 or 3 years ago. So it's certainly an important part. What I will say, though, is when we talk to clients, technology usually isn't the big hurdle to get over. Usually there's multiple solutions for just about everything that our clients want to do from the technical side. The real hurdles come with, how do you bring that enabling technology to life in a way that ultimately is going to deliver value and ROI to the organization? And those hurdles are softer ones. So I typically think of 4. So one being, how do you rethink your talent and human capital model?
Mm-hmm.
So those that were operating your facilities in the past perhaps aren't going to be operating your facilities in the future. You're going to need different skills, different capabilities, different types of workers in order to be successful in the future versus where you are today. And so how do you go on that transformation from a human capital perspective? Without a doubt, can't lose sight of process, right? Even if you're automating things, there's always opportunities as you think about automated, semi-automated, and manual to rethink how you streamline and optimize your processes that define your business, the ways of working that then support that. Very, very critical component that you don't want to miss out. And you don't want to try to digitize bad processes. You want to digitize optimized processes. That's a really important piece. The third one is around data. And I think Mike and Robert were talking about this a moment ago. Look, data is the new currency. We've all been saying that forever. But guess what? Data can be bad if you don't have enough, and data can be bad if you have too much. And so how do you think about structuring your data? How do you think about your tech stack and how everything's going to work together? How do you move up and down that tech stack and move information around such that you can drive insights that are meaningful, that are going to fundamentally change how you operate and create value for the organization? And then the last one I'll just say, and it's going to sound a little soft, but I can't tell you how important it is how do you go on the journey from a cultural change perspective? Look, businesses are changing. The customers are asking for more. The world is asking for more, and manufacturers have to step up to attack that. And so how are you going to bring the entire organization on that cultural change to get them comfortable with the fact that if you're not digitizing your operations, you're falling behind? And eventually you're going to lose any competitive advantage you have if you're not able to fundamentally mind shift to think differently about how you operate. So those are four that come to mind for me. Maybe to get to the second part of the question, Danny, I think the answer is when you think of supply chain resilience, manufacturing is at the center of every supply chain, right? Even in the old model, score model, right? Make is right there in the middle. And I think all organizations today are starting to think about manufacturing through the lens of resilience in a different way. And the different way is if you were just looking at cost and you had your operations and your manufacturing all 6 weeks away from a boat ride from China, you're going to have to rethink things like nearshoring and onshoring. How you fundamentally produce goods and where you produce them is going to change such that you can improve your resilience across your network. And I think a lot of consideration around manufacturing strategy is starting to come into play today, given the pandemic and everything we saw with Black Swan events over the last couple of years. So I think manufacturers are going to play a critical role in helping to improve resilience. Right on.
So the next question I want to address to Robert is, this is all great, it's exciting. Now we are all Now we need that our lens shouldn't be focused only on technology, but also beyond technology and how critical of a role our industry plays in the whole supply chains and all of that stuff. But where do we start? So for someone who is sort of on the sideline and say, I've been hearing now enough about smart manufacturing and Industry 4.0, and give us some free first steps. So Robert, where do we start in the transition towards adopting a smart factory?
Yeah, sure. So the three basic steps that I always would recommend is, well, first of all, understand really where you are today. So, and this is always a question that raises some eyebrows. But actually, where are you standing today? What kind of equipment do you have? Do you have your processes documented? Because as soon as you start talking to other people who do not know your company, they will ask this first to you, right? You need to have a nice understanding, and ideally a document understanding of where you are today. Otherwise, you don't really have a base point to start from. So as you know where you are today, this is clear. Then the second part would be to find out where you want to be in the future, right? So set a future vision. And how long this future vision is away depends really on your type of business and on your company, right? Might be for some it's 3 years, others is 5 years, 10 years, maybe even 15 years for other companies. But have a vision where you want to be on a specific point in time, and make some very smart measurable goals, right? So it should be clear where you want to be growing. So anyone in the organization who is going to implement an improvement or actually make any choice, they will be able to make this choice based on where they are today, where the company wants to be in the future. If this is not clear, it's very hard to align all innovations to a single goal. Well, the third one is, well, design a roadmap. Roadmap could be, for example, a list with all the improvements that you can see and would like to implement. And ideally, it might be a bit of an agile Scrum approach. So you have a long list where all your opportunities and all your steps are, and make sure that you can prioritize them. Because sometimes you want to start with some small steps just to test the water and get your people involved. But when something happens in the world, let's say now the war that's going on, which is raising energy prices, you might want to reorganize your roadmap, right? So this is the third step. Have a roadmap where you know the steps and the opportunities that you have, and be flexible enough to implement them, well, when they make most sense for you. And then the fourth step would be, of course, to start the implementation according to your roadmap to your goals. So these would be the three main steps that I would suggest.
Right on, right on. And I want to transition to starting taking live questions from the audience. So I remind everyone to start type your questions, not in the chat, but in the Q&A. And we already have 3 or 4 questions that I'm going to start fielding from there and supplying to our panel. So I want to start with the one that came the most recent from Tony Larcombe. He's asking us, what are some of the key challenges and opportunities that need to be addressed in order to effectively integrate emerging technologies such as AI and machine learning into the IoT-enabled factory? How can we overcome these challenges to realize the full potential of the smart factory? So I would like to field this to Mike, and then Jason. Can you speak a little bit about the AI and the machine learning and the data, and how we transition to adopting those technologies?
Oh, that's fantastic. It's a perfect question because the digital transformation started in the IT world. You know, they've been doing it for a long time, and I was in that world for the last 20 years before that was in manufacturing. The IT world is really focused on data lakes, data warehousing, machine learning, artificial intelligence. The cloud is just full of all those capabilities. And you have to get data into those systems to do to get that value add. And how do you get your data there? You need some way to bridge from the factory to the cloud, and the factory to IT. So a large organization might have their own IT shop with their own data scientists, their own data engineers, and doing data warehousing and machine learning. And so the IT world has to be brought into the OT world. We have to be able to bring the two together, because the IT world tends to have all the specialists and experts in those areas. And we need, and that's a challenge. I mean, just a quick story. I was at this large automobile manufacturer in their research and development facility over in Detroit. And while I was there, the director of the facility comes over and he says, "Can you guys help out? We got an IT guy who came over here to meet with one of my guys, and they ghosted him. It was an OT guy." And he said, "But the OT guys don't want to talk to this IT guy." And he was trying to get data to go do some machine learning. And he says, "Will you guys talk to him and tell him how we can get his data?" Because there is, the IT guys and OT guys traditionally have a, kind of a barrier between them. And we really do have to bring these worlds together if we're going to bring digital transformation and bring the cloud and machine learning to manufacturing. And so that's where we need processes. We need different kinds of workers. Like Jason was saying, it's not just about technology, it's culture, right? But we need to break through all those things with some technologies that enable those cultural changes. Because it's a different kind of worker today that needs to bridge OT and IT and think at a higher level. And so the new technologies like MQTT and JSON enable that to think at a higher level and then bridge right across. Because I can tell you, IT loves JSON and IT loves a message queue technologies like MQTT, and they use other technologies like AMQP that have plugins that work with MQTT, and they love REST APIs, and they love SQL for data warehousing. So if a technology can do all of those, they can get data to IT for you, and the IT guys will just love you because you can give them the data they're hungry for.
Jason,
I mean, so Mike said it well. So IT/OT convergence, which I'm sure everyone here has been reading about for a while. I love the idea of taking your IT team and your OT team and locking them in a room and throwing away the key for about a month and just force them to figure out how to play nice together. And again, this gets back to the cultural comment I was making earlier. I mean, if you're operating independently, and by the way, the other thing, Mike he didn't say it explicitly, but IT usually overpowers OT because OT is a bit newer, right? And so trying to find some balance in that, right? The same way you want to find balance between your sales organization and your manufacturing organization is actually quite important. And so I think bringing them together, huge opportunity to unlock value. The other thing I'll just say, AI ML, right? I mean, you can train your solutions, you can get them to start thinking on your behalf. But unless you're using closed loop solutions, eventually you've got to get information back to an operator, and they have to be willing to trust whatever sits inside that black box is telling them the right answer. And we still struggle as we engage with clients, even those that have really good AI ML solutions, to get them to drive change through their operations. It's hard to believe, but a lot of times what those algorithms will tell an operator is to do something that is counterintuitive to their knowledge network and what they've learned over time. And again, this is a change management exercise. So how do you fundamentally change that behavior? It's not so much getting the solution right, it's getting the action right on the back end when the machine tells the operator to do something differently. So just think about all the dimensions of this. I think the technology's been there for a bit and it's getting better and better, but it doesn't change the human component, which is very challenging.
Mm-hmm.
I want to add to what Jason just said about the human component, which is so real, so true. If the machine learning can give feedback to the human, because machine learning are typically classifiers. They can do predictive too, but classifiers are very useful because the machine can classify and say, this is an error condition. This is a warning condition. This is an alert condition based on a lot of complex machine learning variables that it's figured out. And then the human can go, yeah, if you give the human that information, they can look at the real world situation and make a judgment call. So I think it's merging, like you said, Jason, with take machine information that's helping the human make decisions. Then the human can learn to trust and grow together. And then human can also say, that algorithm sucks. It's not giving me good information. Retrain that thing with better data,
Right.
and then go retrain it.
Mm-hmm. So these are beautiful insights, and I think, and our audience is fabulous. They are pouring questions on the Q&A, which is the appropriate place to ask questions. So I'm looking and trying to synthesize some of the themes. And one of the themes that I see emerging is about the ROI. So Newton, Fernandez, and then other people further down in the thread are asking about, customers are excited about industrial IoT, but then always they come back to show me what's the ROI. How do we mentioned some cost reductions and other benefits, but what are some other ways to show the customers the benefits, the ROI, the business, the value of the business use case that we are solving with smart manufacturing? How do you get about showing ROI? I guess other than inviting them to your factory, right? You can always bring Jason can take you to Wichita and you can see it in practice. But
I can start, and Robert has said this a few times, but maybe just to hit it one more time, right? This notion of sort of dream big, start small, and scale fast is a motto that I think a lot of organizations use. I am a really big fan of when you start your digital journey, creating a true north. And what I mean by true north is forget about all the little pieces. Let's just start with what the vision of the future is for our organization and choose the duration or time frame that makes sense. Could be 5 years, could be 10 years. Pick a spot and say, look, our goal is to ultimately be able to operate, and I'm just going to pick a number, $250 million less than we're running today at the same output, and start making that your true north. And then as Robert and Mike have described through some of their stories, the trick is to decompose that true north, which you're never going to lose sight of, by the way, that's your organizational focus, into a whole bunch of bite-sized pieces that are all dependent on one another. So they're sequenced the right way such that you can over time develop capability in small chunks and unlock components of that ROI as you go from day 0 to day N. And that to me that's the success model. Set realistic expectations, move at a pace that's fit for purpose for your organization, but never lose sight of what that true north is. Now, what that means is, and the reason why this approach is so important is, every single effort that you go after that's along that pathway doesn't have to have a positive ROI. It doesn't. The aggregate has to have a positive ROI, right? But you're going to have to do things along the way that when you look at them independently may look like a very low or perhaps even a negative ROI step, but that's okay, as long as it's in the greater good of establishing infrastructure and capability that allows you to get to your $250 million. And that's what you have to level set the executive committee around, that you're going to put a plan together that's going to get you there and is going to generate a very meaningful ROI for the organization over its duration.
Yeah, I think actually is a very good point, right? And it makes a lot of sense to start with a couple of cases that are actually making a nice return on investment. So the C-levels are getting a bit more excited, right? And they also are more ready to tolerate some investments which might not directly result in ROI. So yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. I completely agree with Jason here. And yeah, I would just like to add, like, don't start by looking, we want to make this improvement, but start looking where you want to be, and then look down where the opportunities are, right? Because we see quite often clients ask us, like, what can you do for this particular case? What kind of return on investment can you generate? And typically these are the cases that already put some time in themselves, and usually they're not even the biggest opportunities. So zoom out where you're going to put your time and focus, and focus on a bigger goal. Yeah.
Right.
And I think you look for where the pain is too. Find where your pain is in the organization, in your process, and then find a way to solve that pain, and then find the right technology and the right culture and the right steps to reduce that pain, and then you can prove ROI very quickly in some cases. And like I love what Danny, I love what everyone is saying, Jason and Robert and Danny, about the start small. Pick something that you can get your hands around, find a real difficult pain point, and then find a way to solve that in an effective way to demonstrate that, yes, if we solve this, we can get some ROI gains in the short run. And then you can justify some long-term costs to justify long-term ROI gains. But it's hard to justify the long-term gain if it's all you're doing is spending money in the beginning. So it's good to get some find the pain, get some real wins. And then I love what you said, Jason, about the long-term. You're going to have some additional costs. But if you focus on solutions that give you low code, so you don't have to hire very expensive developers, the more we are in a new age of, it's not just write custom code all the time anymore. Now you can have low code solutions that do most of the work for you. Find those. Don't be satisfied with the old model of let's hire a developer to go build everything for you.
Right.
That's going to be really expensive and slow.
Right. Right. So there's another theme of questions that I see as is emerging on the Q&A about. I would like, Mike, for you to start addressing this. Should there be, or which should be an architect? This is from David, and further down, I'm going to combine the question with the one from Danielle Niamtu. They were asking about, is there a starting point, a starting architecture, or a pivot solution to launch the transformation? Is there a predefined path to follow, and what's the role of open source on that path, if there is such a starting solution or starting architecture?
Yeah, I do think you need to think about, first you need to decide, what is your vision? I mean, Jason mentioned it earlier. You need to have, your dream. What is your dream? You're going to dream big, and then figure out your vision, both not only for the organization, but your technology. So my vision is MQTT and JSON. After all these, about almost 40 years of doing this stuff, I've really come to that conclusion, and it's a very genuine belief that I have. It's not promoting any product here. I really believe in that. Once you choose your vision of how you can do it, and you have to have good reasons, all the value propositions that Jason's talking about for making that choice, then you choose a technology vendor that will support you. You choose a system integrator, you choose the technology that can make it low code, make it fast, to bridge from the legacy technologies to this new technology, because you're going to need a bridge. You can't just, maybe you're lucky like I did. One time in my entire career, I got to automate an entire factory from scratch. One time out of 15 years of doing, integrations. So you may be lucky, but if you have a brownfield scenario, you're going to have a bridge. So choose a technology that can get you from the brownfield to the greenfield and get you to that big vision. And so that's what I would recommend, is choose a platform. Choose a platform that'll take you there. Choose a partner that will help you, that will understand that platform and can help you get there. And choose wisely, because you are going to invest a lot in that platform. But you talk about open source. I don't think open source is the answer. I'm not against open source. What I'm saying is I don't think open source is an answer. I think the answer is standards. I think the answer is choosing the vision based on true open standards. Whether you buy an open source product or buy a commercial product is kind of almost the same thing. when you're buying an open source, you're getting something for free in the beginning so you can try before you buy, but ultimately you pay the vendor for support on that open source product. So you're buying a commercial product. You just need to choose the right product, whether it's a Trojan horse open source deal that sneaks its way in and then you end up stuck with it, or you choose it because it's the best of breed. However you do it, it's still you're buying it.
That's beautiful. And I wanna end with one question that just came from Sheldon about the humanitarian. So everyone it's asking about digital transformation, how it's going to improve the bottom line and the ROI and all. So we want that, and we want for every organization to be successful, it needs to stay in the game, it needs to create a profit. What about the humanitarian side of adopting IoT? Can you give some scenarios? He gives here example. Sheldon gave us example where a smart factory end up building other products like hand sanitizers that were helpful during COVID. What's the humanitarian? What's beyond improving the bottom line? What are some aspects that adoption to digital transformation stories that you have seen? How digital factories have came up with solutions, with innovative solutions during COVID, and help the society and beyond just improving the bottom line for their organization. And that would be a way for us to wrap up the discussion.
Humanitarian. I had to think for a second what the question, the core of the question was about. But actually, in order to make successful innovation in a company, you have to have your people on board, right? If you implement technology and people are not going to use it, it's no innovation because it's not going to work. So with Industry 4.0 and Industrial IoT, we should also be focusing on improving the lives of people who are using it, right? So we might make work a bit more fun. We can take away some of the very boring or repetitive tasks there, right? And with every implementation that we're aiming for, we always like to improve the life of someone who hands-on working in the line, for example. So everyone gets better from it, and it motivates everyone to start thinking together with the company to keep growing, right? Because these people, everyone in the organization has a lot of knowledge about what they are doing, and the more ready they are share their ideas with the company, the more value you can create during your transformation. So yeah, keeping people on board, making sure that everyone benefits from Industry 4.0. So examples would be to make it more fun, make it less repetitive, make for example the work less physically demanding, right? These are all small examples. Make it more fun, right? Because some work can be a bit dull sometimes. If you can make it somehow more fun because it's easy to work with a tool, well, these are all examples which I would say are humanitarian improvements.
So Danny, maybe not a specific example, but a comment I think it's worth making, and we only hit on it lightly here in today's discussion, is my personal view is when you're doing Industry 4.0, you're really driving much more agility and flexibility into your manufacturing operation, fundamentally in everything you do. And by definition, what that means is the notion of standing up manufacturing facilities that are all high volume, single product, right? Turn the thing on, let it run in perpetuity. Those days are over, right? We're moving in a different direction as we head into the future. And I believe it's around micro manufacturing and how do you think about doing things at smaller scale, more personalized, more customized, because consumers are demanding that. And I think you can apply that same logic to the question around humanitarianism, which is if you have nimble, agile assets and you're able to run many things on them because you've adopted technology and you've adopted a lot of the techniques and tools we talked about today, you should be able to run many, many things on your production line with very little change. And that's different than how we operate today as a manufacturing community. It's all very specific, bulk, high volume. And I think as we make that shift, it's going to open up an opportunity for manufacturers to do a lot more good in their communities than they have in the past.
That's a perfect way to finalize our session. So I want to thank our speakers, the panelists, for sharing the insights, the knowledge. I want to thank our sponsors for making this session possible. And thank you, our audience, for being with us, being thinking partners. Looking forward to seeing everyone in the next session. And thanks, everyone. Have a great end of the year and an even greater start of the new year. And let's go together. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.